Okay, so today I am doing a taste review on three Annonas that I have that are right now. To my left right here, this is a small little Geffner. Geffner usually have these little bumps, and then as it ripens, it kind of gets soft. Very thin skin, they don't ship very well, but it is my favorite Annona. This is a Cherimoya seedling from a booth seedling. The fruits kind of vary. Sometimes they have bumps. Sometimes they're more kind of flatter like this all around. And this is a PPC. First time I'll be trying this, so we'll see how it goes. And usually with a lot of these Annonas and Annamoyas and Cherimoyas, you can kind of cut it in half, kind of see it, but you can also just kind of easily split it. For example, that's what I'm going to do with this one. So I'm going to just go ahead and split it open. See how it is. Really nice looking, appetizing flesh. This will be the first time I'm sampling a PPC. Oh wow, this one has a very strong aroma of a purebred sugar apple. Yep. Very, very strong sugar apple aroma on this. Even peels off really nicely too, like this. Kind of like many of the sugar apples, you could kind of just peel off the skin with no issue. Similar to this. So this so far has a lot of traits of the sugar apple. Let's see how it tastes. So far, it's not as sweet as I would like it to be. A much more straightforward flavor profile. Very sugar apple-ish. It's not that complex where it has a lot of these other tropical fruit flavors. Practically almost no type of kind of acidity to it. Very this is the closest Annona I ever had that came to pretty much an sugar apple in taste. Maybe I could have picked this a little bit later, and maybe then it would develop a bit more sweetness. Not really too sure. This is the first year I'm trying it, so okay. Next up is my seedling Cherimoya. Here it goes. This is one of my favorite Cherimoya seedlings. At one time I was quite interested in Cherimoyas and Annamoyas, but especially Cherimoyas. I really like the flavor. I just never really liked the texture that much. So at one time I actually ended up fruiting nearly maybe a dozen different varieties, a dozen different seedlings of Cherimoyas. And what I was actually looking for is something a Cherimoya that had more of a texture of a sugar apple, and that was my goal. Because most Cherimoya, when they ripen, it's much more custardly. It doesn't have a chew to it. Very kind of custardly, soft flesh. So that's what I was kind of at least choosing my seedlings off of. Unfortunately, most of that seedling was a failure when it came to that kind of type of texture. None of them really hold up. This was the closest one I got to. This is a very, very good texture. It's the closest one I got to it, and if you don't let it over ripen, it has a very nice chewy texture. Yep. Yeah, so this was the closest one I came to that breeding project. Unfortunately, I didn't really go any further in terms of it. I wish I had maybe gone with like another second or third generation of it. The goal was trying to get a purebred Cherimoya with the texture of a sugar apple. And this was the closest thing I did get to it. But it could have probably used another second generation of it to kind of get more of that. Very good, and still one of my all-time favorite. It was one of the few seedlings that I ended up keeping out of my Cherimoyas. And one of the reasons why I was doing that is because it's, taste is all kind of still preference, right? But for me, Cherimoyas was the more or less the first Antimoya I had, so I didn't really grow up eating. Cherimoyas were the first Annonas I have, so I didn't grow up eating sugar apples or anything like that. So I kind of more or less had Cherimoyas first as my Annona, and I always loved the flavor of the Cherimoya, and like I said, taste is all a bit of a preference. And Cherimoya, they don't have that stronger, some sort of like flavonoid or that you taste in the Antimoya. So how I would describe a Cherimoya is versus like the other Annonas, like a sweet sop or an Antimoya, is that it has a much more complex flavor, much more better acid balance. But it's not like an acidity where you can kind of taste it and it's sour. It's just, imagine like a pineapple at its most ripeness, and you take out all the acidity in it, that makes it sour, but it still has that kind of pineapple sub-acid flavor, and that's what a Cherimoya has. There are some varieties that are much more sweeter, and some that's not as sweeter, but usually it's much more complex flavor. Like, you kind of taste like a bit of like everything from pineapples to mango to some bit of guava and papaya. It's very tropical tasting, and also has a bit of like stone fruit components to it, like kind of like a pear, a bit of a pearish pear flavor to it. So that's how I describe most Cherimoyas. Most of the texture on most cherimoyas is very soft, custardy, so what I was kind of breeding for back then was I was selecting for seedlings that had a more firmer, chewy texture. This is out of all that seedlings, this was the best selection that I made out of it. Unfortunately, I never kind of progressed to like that second generation of this. I did at the time. I did food out about 12, I would say a dozen seedling cherimoyas, and I mean only a few of them really had any of that kind of firm, chewy texture. This one was the best one out of it. If I had a chance to do it more, I would have kind of went with a second or third generation of this. So I wanted a purebred Cherimoya, but that one that had a texture of a sweet sop, sugar apple, for example. So it's very good. And one of the things, one of the reasons why I was searching for, trying to get a purebred Cherimoya is that kind of depending on where you grew up and what you raised and your taste preference. Lots of people kind of love the sweet sop because it has this kind of aroma to it, but also something I would call like a kind of like a phenolic aftertaste to it. That some people may or may not like. I was not used to that. That aftertaste kind of reminds me a bit of rubber and chemical. I don't want to try to make it unpleasant, but for someone who didn't grow up eating sweet sops or antimoyas, that's what it reminded me of. It seemed like a little bit of a flaw in that taste profile, which is why I was kind of going for a purebred Cherimoya selection, but would have none of that phenolic kind of aftertaste in it, which I found in the antimoya and the sweet sop, which is it's not that bad a thing. I mean, I'm used to it now. I ate so much of that the antimoya that I'm used to it. My family, on the other hand, they really do prefer the antimoya, and they like that kind of parts of the aroma and chewiness of it. So that's one of the reasons why I was working on this breeding project. Maybe one day I'll restart it again, but unfortunately right now, I probably won't be kind of moving much forward with that, just because my family loves the antimoya, so it's something. Most of my trees now has been grafted over to it, and it's what I grow up mostly now for them. So for myself, I still have a few Cherimoya branches left that I kind of save the fruit for myself to eat. Oh, and one thing about this is I have a friend who tried this Cherimoya for the first time, and she had described the flavor and texture in an interesting way that I've never been described to me before. So in terms of sour sops, some sour sops have a very there are sweet sour sops. I've never had the sweet sour sops before. I only had the sour one, but there are sweet strains of sour sop, and she described this as a as very much reminding her of a soursop from Malaysia in terms of taste and texture, which I thought was very surprising because I mean, although this has a really nice sub-acid balance, I would have never described it as being, you know, sour or anything like that, or even reminding me of soursop. Most soursop has very fibrous. The ones I have is very fibrous, where it's kind of stringy. This isn't stringy; it's firm and chewy, but it's not what I would call stringy. So just some additional info on this this seedling variety, since it is the few of the ones I have kept. You know, I kept a couple out of that seedling project I had. Up next is the Geffner. This is the Geffner Cherimoya. The thing with Geffner is one where it's kind of hard for you to break apart. If I try to break it apart like that, usually I'm just kind of destroying the fruit. So it usually has a much more kind of like doesn't really separate out into kind of like these separate segments. Although it's still there, you let it get really ripe, it is there and you could do it. But I found that it's better before it gets to that phase, and you can't really even try to split up. You just pretty much destroy the fruit. So with the Geffner, I usually like to kind of cut it up. And this is the Geffner. So, you know, usually Geffner has very soft skin. It doesn't ship well. Lots of these, like, they break off in shipping no matter how much you kind of wrap it. So with Geffner, usually I need to kind of peel them, but it has a very, like, you know, for those that like the firm and chewy texture, I really consider Geffner to be superior in that to the other varieties. Just that firmness, textures, it's kind of like one whole piece. So this is Geffner after I kind of peeled all the skin. Geffner, the interesting about Geffner is that although it has this very soft skin that's kind of doesn't ship well, once you let it get soft to the stage, I could put this in the fridge and it holds up really well. Like the skin actually gets leathery, and the fruit, in terms of the flesh, it doesn't develop all these kind of browning and spotting that lots of the Cherimoya varieties does. So lots of Cherimoya varieties you put in the fridge, it doesn't really hold in long. You know, you're gonna probably have to still eat it within a week or so, like that, even after it's soft. But with Geffner, I have left this thing in the fridge for like a month, and I could go back in, cut it off. There's very light browning, and you can still eat it, and it's still really good. So this is Geffner. Not as sweet as African Pride, but like I said, it's a much better flavor balance. I think the flavor balance leans a little bit more to sub-acid, has a bit more complex flavor, so it definitely has a bit more of some of that good qualities in the Cherimoya genes. So that's my review on these Annonas. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in.